We are back. We are back. It's happening. Happy Wednesday. Back to Toronto. Back to Instagram Lives. Can't wait to have another fantastic session with you. We have fixed the floors. So check this out. Look at the new, ooh, fancy. Look at the new floors. Super excited. So we're going to do a one-on-one. I see Elizabeth here in the chat. Let's bring her in. Part of Movement Makers. And let's do it. Let's do it. Feels good to be back. I missed you guys. It's only been a week or something, but it feels like forever. All right, here we go. Elizabeth in the house.
Yeah, I am. Hi, I'm doing good. Yeah, it's an exciting thing actually going on because I'm trying to figure out how I'm actually going to deal with everything I'm learning and how to become part of this movement. So yeah. Here I am.
I love it. So for everybody watching, Elizabeth is part of my Movement Makers program, and we're doing a IG Live together to help. So first off, where's home for you?
My home is in the Netherlands, in The Hague, actually, where the government is settled, close to the beach. So that's where I am.
I love it. When I did my first book, Your One Word, the amount of people who bought from Holland was crazy. I mean, it's not that big a country, but there's so many people who have the entrepreneurial mind. So anyway, I'm going to have to do some event in Holland at some point, and we'll let you know.
That's
cool. Well, we're here. We have this time together. How can I help? What's on your mind?
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed when I joined this community, don't get me wrong, I love Facebook, I love Instagram, but more from a personal interest or maybe just relaxing a little bit, doing some lazy stuff or getting involved with, people but not that close with. I'm specifically a LinkedIn fan for my company. I started my company with a co-founder, my business partner, half a year ago, and it's more business to business. So I'm trying to figure out how I am able to use all your tips and all your information, but maybe not starting a new channel, but more how I can implement it in my LinkedIn strategy. But maybe I'm all wrong and I should go on Instagram, but I'm trying to figure out what's splitting in and doing two things half or doing one thing 100%.
What's the business? What are you selling?
We're selling actually growth strategy, helping companies realize a growth strategy. So it's specifically for commercial teams, but it's connected. Well, we are connecting financial, people and happiness and transformation. So these three pillars of growth, we are combining those in our programs and services, helping companies to realize, their growth strategy.
And what's the size of the company that you're working with?
How big we are at the moment, or the companies we
your
are
customers.
Helping? Oh, well, it depends a
customers.
little bit. The funny thing is, it's not as much about the size. It's more about how does our ideal customer profile looks like, and not only from the demographics and geographics point of view, but also from the DNA match. So how do we fit from from values, your culture, your beliefs? So it's not about the size, but to mention a few things, we are not working with companies who don't have marketing or sales in place, because then they're really looking for some kind of execution arms instead of, building the foundation for the future. So that's a thing. Companies who really believe, who have a people-centric approach, have people in the heart, but also if you look at from, building the business, believe in account centricity. So I don't know if that gives you some context.
Yeah, I like it. I would take everything that we're talking about and do it YouTube and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the stuff that we're talking about on Instagram, you do on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
in the business to business environment. So YouTube, the beautiful thing is your content will still live forever. So all the strategies, all of the ideas, all the advice that you're giving in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, you're still running this business. You still want to grow the business. You still want to get clients for the business, but you're talking to a business audience. So the goal isn't, you don't need to have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. It's not the goal. The goal is to try to get more clients for the business. But everybody is on YouTube at some point, and they're searching for different strategies to help them in their company.
That's true.
And then you clip the content for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is faster, more immediate. YouTube's better for long term. And everything is geared towards who actually says yes to hiring you. Is it actually the CEO? Is it the CMO? Is it the HR department? Like, who's hiring you?
Mostly the CEO. Yeah.
The CEO.
Yeah, mostly. Because
But
this is really actually transforming your whole business model. So it's kind of a change. It's not dramatic, but it's, you know, it's a whole different mindset. So absolutely, at the end, the economic buyer is the CEO.
So then you're not working with like the Fortune 500 companies. You're a step down in terms of the size of companies. They don't have like 10,000 employees.
No. Sometimes they have, but it's not specifically where they're investors. It's more like that they are already, from a legacy point of view, are an enterprise. But we really like what is close to our hearts is the software companies and how they're scaling and how they, you know, want to grow every year. But you cannot only, you know, go after the financial growth if you don't combine it with other types of growth.
And the CEO is not participating in the training, correct? It's for the team.
At the end, it's the team, the VPs or the C-level has to do it with their teams, yes.
So does the training work without the CEO being involved or no?
The training itself, well, it's not specifically training that we are delivering. It's more programs and services, because if you really want to reach those that growth strategy. So we're more in subscriptions, so that they have a period of time. We are in their team as an associate, helping them to build a foundation, to build the strategies, to adapt, to implement, to improve. And then, of course, at the end, we will leave, because we also want to share our knowledge and that they're fine to go, you know, as far as they can. So at the end, we will give them the push to swim on their own.
I guess what I'm asking is, the more CEO buy-in that you need, if the CEO can just sign the check and you're going to show up and do everything, it's a lot easier than saying, okay, CEO, I also need 4 days of your time to be committed to this as well. Sure. So obviously you need the CEO involved. They're making the decision and they can't just be completely hands-off. But if this is a group thing that they all have to be a part of, including the CEO, versus, okay, I'm just a decision maker and then you guys are going to take care of everything, it's a lot easier for the CEO to say yes to.
True.
So that then takes into the positioning of the content. It's a combination of talking to the CEO, like the CEO is the buyer. So it's showing how your programs have improved different companies and what the problem is from a CEO level. What is a CEO struggling with? But then when you come in, it fixes things. And then also from the employee level, but thinking as a CEO, like the employee came in, they got working with you, they improved their performance. Now the company is growing because you're involved. We're still positioning it towards the CEO buyer, not the employee. Look what you're going to learn and look how you're going to grow. It's look how the company's going to grow, because we want our CEO to look at the content and say, oh my gosh, we need to hire her. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So from a content perspective, like, okay, well, that's great. So what do we actually share? What do we put out there? How do we get seen? How do we get noticed? Can you take on a client anywhere in the world, or does it have to be Holland?
No, Well, actually, at the moment, most of our customers are abroad. So yeah, so we're not stick to Holland at all. No.
Perfect, because there are only so many Dutch software companies
I
that you can
know.
work with, right?
I know.
And it's a great model because software, high margins, typically forward-thinking CEOs willing to invest in their team. Talent is at a premium and hard to get. And if this is something that then helps expand the growth of the company, it's great. So then as a content strategy thinking, how do we talk directly to the CEO and the specific problems that those companies are facing and those individuals are facing and growing their company that you can address? And then on an individual level, what are some of the things that the people who've taken your, maybe not training, but your programs, they've seen benefits and it's also helped the company grow?
So are you saying that at the end, it's a mixture of addressing topics that where CEOs care about, so about, for example, about customer lifetime value, that's some high on the agenda of CEOs, but at the same time, taking a little bit more down in that hierarchy, saying, okay, these are the challenges of, well, a chief commercial officer, of a VP sales, or can you make that mixture, or should you really look for your niche? Also in terms of your, well, in this case, the CEO.
Well, your niche is the CEO because that's who's buying you. Everybody else, maybe the chief commercial officer refers you in to say, hey, we could use these trainings, but it's still the CEO who we're selling to. The thing is, you've worked with enough companies, you know enough of the patterns and the problems, and a lot of these CEOs, it might be their first time going through this venture. It may be their first time ever hiring a chief commercial officer. And so they don't necessarily know the standards, the pitfalls, the roadmap, the issues that you can. So you have worked with how many chief commercial officers, as an example, you have a depth of knowledge that the CEO doesn't have because they've only hired one. And so that's when you're making content around how to level up a chief commercial officer, it's interesting for the chief commercial officer, but our target market with the content is still the CEO.
Okay.
So we're talking top level to the CEO about the issues that they're facing and how they can grow their company and some of the pitfalls and how their systems aren't working and all the mistakes. And it's so needed because software companies are growing so quickly that they don't have the infrastructure underneath them. It's not like this is some family business that's been around for 3 generations and they have their process and now you need to inject innovation into it. They don't know what they're doing. They're growing so fast. They have money that they brought on from investors. They're making money from their customers and they're growing so quickly that they don't know, they don't have the pillars. A lot of them are building on quicksand. I saw this, I had a software company, it was my background. And then I was a venture capitalist and we invested in the software companies. And that was the big problem, is they don't have the infrastructure, the tools, the mechanics. We often had to replace the CEO to say, hey, you're actually not, you shouldn't be the CEO, you should be the chief product officer or the COO. And we need to help you to scale up to, a 9-figure business. You need to have a professional CEO brought in place. So I get it. Like those are great companies to work with because they have a lot of money and they have a lot of problems. And they just need someone to help take care of it. So I think we're not targeting 1 million people. We don't have to have 1 million followers on LinkedIn or 1 million subscribers on YouTube. That's not who you're trying to reach. But we need to create targeted content, have a targeted audience of the CEOs who can hire you and the up and coming CEOs who may not be able to hire you yet, but they're learning the process and they're learning from your content. And when they get the next round of funding, you're the first person that they call to come in and help them with all of their training and systems and tools.
Yeah. Exactly. So
go ahead.
So if you look at the challenges and needs that a CEO is having, so is it okay then? Because, for example, they have 5 challenges. So, but from my perspective, feels a little bit awkward to write about the same stuff all the time. And of course, you pick a different angle every time, but still, it's kind of, you're repeating. So at the end is repeating your story, your messaging. Is that the power, or do we have to dive deeper or different, or to see what is resonating?
Yeah, the two specific things I would look at for you are news cycle and then coaching. So you have 8 to 10 things that you say to every client. That you come in and you have your tools and you don't have to have a million things. You have your 5 to 8 to 10 things, and that's what your company goes in and you're excellent at. And those are foundational. Like those 8 to 10 things in 5 years are still going to be the same 8 to 10 things. The tools and the delivery might change a little bit, but it's still the same foundational principles that you're teaching. Great. So the trick is, inside those 8 to 10 things, how do we make it relevant to right now? Because that will change every year. So how do you make it relevant right now? Well, you can, it's news cycle and coaching. So news cycle is, look at the companies that they aspire to be like. So that's why I asked you about how big are the companies, just to get a sense, right? So you're not targeting Fortune 500 companies, but if your companies right now are kind of in the 100 employee mark, they want to get to 500 employees. That's where they want to go. And they don't know how to do it because they've never done it before. So if you can help teach them how to do it by taking something, you're in the growth business. You're trying to teach them how to grow, right? And they've had lots of success already, and they don't have peers that they can talk to, and they don't know who can call them out and say, okay, here's where you're making mistakes. So if you were to look at companies that were ahead of them, 200 employees, 500 employees, and critique them and say, here's what they're doing wrong. Hey, this new thing came out. If you had a comment on the whole Richard Branson versus Jeff Bezos, or Jeff Bezos stepping down from CEO to become, to focus on his other business, to become chairman, etc. What's your take on that? When does a CEO step down from being a CEO? And I'm sure
so
you have
more as a kind of opinion, spreading your opinion about how the world is changing in terms of, the familiar CEOs?
Yeah, you're looking at your 8 to 10 core concepts that you teach, and then you're trying to find a present day example of how it could be applied. So for example, do you teach succession planning at all, or leadership transition, or how to bring on people under you? Is that part of the material that you're going through, the trainings or the programs?
Yeah, leadership transition or transformation is absolutely part of it, yes.
Perfect. So that's one of your 8 things that you teach, leadership transformation or transitioning. Perfect. Jeff Bezos just steps down. Now that's a company that every high growth person looks to. It's like, what is Amazon doing? Help me become the Amazon of whatever software that they're selling, right? So what did he do right? And maybe what did he do wrong? Inside of you're still teaching your core concepts, but you're giving me a practical, real world, 2021 up-to-date example. And then next year, somebody else is going to step down. And then you repeat your same philosophy. Your philosophy isn't changing from year to year. It's like, this is how you should think about leadership transition. But you're giving me the most up-to-date example. Because with every lesson that you're trying to teach, with every philosophy you're trying to ingrain, if you have a lesson, a story attached to it, it's easier to understand. If I tell a story, this guy is A.P. Giannini. He's my favorite entrepreneur of all time. He started Bank of America. If I keep telling the story of A.P. Giannini, it's like, well, who cares? That was a century ago. Like, why? This doesn't matter. It's not relevant anymore. But if you're talking about something that just happened last week that people can learn from, you're taking your timeless principles and then making it contextual to July 2021. So it's constantly on the lookout, and that could be a long form, like that could be a 20-minute YouTube video, And then you can cut that into short LinkedIn clips for people to learn from. And again, our goal isn't 1 million subscribers, but targeted, because I guarantee you, when Jeff Bezos stepped down, a lot of high growth entrepreneurs in their heads are thinking, when do I step down? A lot of entrepreneurs are thinking that, and they don't know. They don't have a plan. Who's teaching them? Who teaches people how to do that? Well, you do, but there's no content. How do I find you? How do I, right? Nobody's making really good content about it. So that's where you could really shine. And again, next month is going to be something else, and next month something else, and next month something else. If you're talking about even things like focus and distractions and which projects to take on, like, is it smart for Richard Branson and Bezos to be doing this space race? You know, is that good for growth for a company? And maybe yes, and maybe no. But again, inside of your 8 to 10 principles, what's happening in the news cycle right now that makes it relevant to me? Because all these high growth entrepreneurs are looking up to these people, and nobody's breaking them down to say, here's how Jeff is doing it, or Richard's doing it, or whoever is doing it. So that could be you. But I'm not asking you to then go and research their whole story and be a biographer and all that. It's no. We're taking the things that you're already great at, your principles that you're teaching constantly, those 8 to 10 things, and then just finding what a relevant example is right now. So you don't have to know the whole history of Jeff Bezos and Amazon. You're just talking about, is this the right time now to transition, and what you need to think about as a CEO when you should step away from your company.
Yeah, and I really like it, because at that point you're also showing a piece of thought leadership on what you see, what is happening, and you know, I recognize your problems or probably your issues. This is what we see happening in the market at this moment. So yeah, and the funny thing is, I'm coming from IT, and I always advise that, you know, jump on all the hacks and everything what happens in terms of the digital things that are happening, and you know, jump on the news and write something about it to create an audience and show some thought leadership. But the funny thing is that I never thought about, you know, I share my thoughts and my you know, my experience in leadership, but in my own role, I never combined it with, you know, connecting it to the news. So yeah, thanks for helping me bring back to that point what I advised in the past.
and definitely a US-centric market, because those are the people who will pay you more. I think of, I had a 3-year deal with Sage accounting software with the CEO, Stephen Kelly, and I did a once-a-month live stream together answering questions from the audience. And then he left Sage, right? He left, the CFO took over, and Sage is a huge company in Europe, but people in North America don't really know Sage, and they didn't know Stephen Kelly, who was the CEO. So part of working with me is to try to expand that reach. So this is sometimes a challenge for European companies, is to use European examples. America is very America-centric. Very little knowledge of what's happening in Europe, and especially in technology. There's a lot of disrespect for what's happening in the European technology scene, right? It's like America, I mean, I'm Canadian, but Americans, we're the best at tech. Silicon Valley, we're the best at tech. So I just, even though you're in Holland, if you serve a US audience, I'd make the content about US-centric CEOs, companies, growth, opportunities. I think about like Tesla moving their offices from California to Texas. I guarantee you a lot of people looked at that and said, maybe I should move my office. Like, maybe California is not the right place for me either. So how do you deal with knowing when you should move your office, and then the whole transition and distraction from your business, all of the stuff that you could help a company with? People don't know who to go to. So your thoughts on that is a fantastic piece of thought leadership inside of your principles that you teach, but you're making it practical.
That's cool. So if you combine what you're saying, and it's absolutely true about the American centricity, but at the same time, what we experience in our conversations is that a lot of American software companies want to enter the European market because they see there are huge potential. At the same time, they don't have a clue how to enter that market because the whole messaging and communication is so different. So that they're looking for, well, from that case, growth partners to enter the European market, and then, to decide, because European maybe looks small if you compare it to America, but at the same time, every country has its own culture and its own specific things. So where are you going to focus on? So how are you going to combine that American centricity in combination with entering new markets? So in this case, the European market.
Again, I would look for something in the news. I can't think of anything recently, but I'm sure you can, of a company that tried to go, not even to Europe, maybe they tried to go to Japan, they tried to go to Africa, they tried to go somewhere, and they just failed because they didn't take into account the cultural sensitivities, because they labeled their product some offensive name in the local language and they didn't even realize it, right? And sharing that as an example is like, hey, so because you could talk about expanding to a different country and how it's important and the steps you need to do. Great, that makes sense, and again, won't change in 5 years. But if you make it relevant in a 2021 environment by showing an example of somebody who did it either really well or incorrectly, but ideally something that already has some steam to it, that already has some, not that you have to say, hey, let me introduce you to this company that you've never heard of and how good a job they did. If it's already part of the news cycle, people are already talking about it, it's already on their mind. If some big company, if some software company, Microsoft's already in every country, but if some software company, then Microsoft made a big mistake. If Microsoft created something new for Japan and they labeled their software something that they thought was a tribute, but ended up being a disaster. If that was front page news about Microsoft's, mess up, that's when you come in and you make your piece of content around how to go international.
Yeah,
and you use Microsoft as the example. So look at the front page of the business news every day from New York Times, Wall Street Journal, etc., and you see what's trending, or Google News or Twitter streams, what's trending right now in the business world. And you may not have a thought on all of them. That's okay. You don't need to. But you pick the couple that actually fit your messaging, and then that's the content that you end up making.
I really love this.
Yeah.
I really love this, because this is, in this case, you're not repeating the same story over and over again, although it's from different angles, but you're really tapping into the news and combining it and what you're saying, even if it's bad or good, but you have an opinion about it.
It's the same principles every time, but it's a different story. And you don't have to come up with the story. The beauty of your business is all of the entrepreneurs that you work with, the CEOs that you work with, they look up to these people. They want to be the next Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. They want to be those people. And so if you're basically telling us how to do it, and the things they did right and the things they did wrong of what's happening right now, I think you win.
Cool. This is so cool. So I'm just going to stick to LinkedIn then. I'm going to check every morning the newspapers, the business pages, and start driving conversations on LinkedIn, connecting to what is happening there.
Yeah, and then ask, well, do you think it was a good idea? Like, all of these are kind of controversial decisions. So at the end, you can ask, do you think it was a good idea for Jeff Bezos to step down now? Yes or no?
Always end with a question.
And then people will debate each other. It's like, yeah, he should have stepped down years ago because of all of these issues and people peeing in their bottles at Amazon workplaces. And then others are like, no, Amazon's amazing and Jeff Bezos should stay there until forever, right? So you create that debate, which also will help the content grow.
Cool.
The more comments there are on the post, the more that content's going to get exposed to new people.
So I have a job to do then.
You have a job to do, yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And listen, normally I like YouTube first and then LinkedIn or anything else. I think LinkedIn first as a strategy works for you because anything news related doesn't do as well like on YouTube. The benefit of YouTube is the videos you make will still be alive in 5 years.
Yeah.
In 5 years, people may not care about the space race or Jeff Bezos stepping down or Elon Musk moving to Texas. Like they may not care about that as much. So a LinkedIn first strategy, I think is really smart for you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Evan. That was really
All right.
helpful.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
Good luck.
Good.
See you soon. Thanks,
You too.
Elizabeth.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay,
See you
bye.
soon. Bye-bye.